Hey, everybody, welcome to the Curious is Better podcast. I'm Craig Lamb with Invative, and today we have with us Simon Kaye from Jaguar Logistics. Welcome, Simon. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Craig. A pleasure to be here.
Uh, before we start, I want you to talk about Jaguar so people understand what you're doing. But actually, why don't we just start there? Why don't you talk about Jaguar and what Jaguar is doing?
Sure. So we are an international transportation and logistics company. 98+% of what we do is international ocean and air freight, both imports to and from the United States, as well as other places around the world, Europe, Central and South America, in Asia, and a little bit of South Africa as well. We have a niche in the cosmetics and health and beauty sector, but also operate in 4 or 5 other verticals, including sports and outdoor living, home goods, packaging, food, non-perishable, and medical device.
Nice. Well, you and I have spoken before, so we're kind of letting the cat out of the bag because you have a really interesting story as far as tech goes, which is the stuff that makes me curious. You say you've been in business 30 years and you had a custom platform for all of your operations for the better part of that. And then I want you to tell the story, but then you hired somebody because it's time to rebuild, renew, reevaluate, things like that. And you thought you were going to go custom because you'd always been custom. You want to talk about that? Like, how'd
Sure.
that go now?
Sure. Yeah. So let me take a step backwards and then go forwards. When I started the business in 1993, so I'm dating myself now, and back in the days of dial-up,
You're 30.
back in the days of dial-up, if anyone remembers that. Um, but I realized very, very quickly, we weren't in the shipping and transportation business. We were in the information business. So, back in the early to mid 90s, we developed our own, at the time, a track and trace program that sort of evolved over the years to become a full end-to-end supply chain management solution for our clients. And as you stated, we did the entire development ourselves. We had it outsourced to a team in the Ukraine, but we developed it and built it, and it evolved over the years. And it really differentiated and defined us. I used to say it was sort of like our signature, and it was really one of the two main reasons that we won and maintain business. So it's technology and then people as well.
Sure. And there's a luxury to that, right? When you have a custom system, there's a luxury to that because regardless of what firm you're working with, and you always hope that it's a good one, but the you have a thought or you have a need and you say, make it do this. And like having that kind of power and then also being able to curate best practices that you can convey, respond to your clients, it's an insane luxury, right? So I say right because I'm talking for you, but again, that's something you existed in. And then when you brought in your CIO, you thought it was for another rebuild strategy, but that's not how it went.
That's exactly correct. Yeah. So you're right. It was an absolute luxury. So things that we needed internally or our clients needed, we were able to turn right around to our development team in the Ukraine and say, build this, add this functionality, add this feature. So that was a real differentiator for us, and it was great. But over the years, the system began to show its age, and we were sort of like bolting on pieces as we grew over that, over that 30-year period. And so I knew it was ready for a rebuild. And we had to take it to the next level. There were other technologies, other TMSs coming onto the market. There was a lot of investment in our sector by outside VC and PE companies, and so there was a lot going on. So I hired a CIO. And I brought her in order to guide us through the rebuild. I thought we needed someone to guide us through this enormous rebuild. So she came on, and for a few weeks after reviewing the system, interviewing members of staff, assessing the situation, she came back to me and, as I refer to it, rolled a hand grenade into the room. And I was waiting for her plan as to how to rebuild it. And she told me, no, 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 you can't rebuild this. This is too big a project. It's too expensive. It's going to take too long. And guess what? You're not a tech company. You're a logistics company. And you need to focus on that.
She said you're not a tech company in the fact that you just don't have staff, engineers, or whatever that can maintain it at a cost point, right? I mean, that's effectively
Right.
what
Yeah,
she's talking about.
correct.
It's like,
Correct. Because it's not as you well know, Craig, it's not static. It's
right.
living, breathing, it's evolving, and technologies, continues to grow and expand at an ever increasing pace. And so we would have to try and keep up with that, maintain it, support it, continue to grow. And she felt that that just wasn't something that we were set up to do. And we're a relatively small and lean team. So in order to do that, it just wasn't practical and feasible. So that really sort of like knocked me back because, I sort of had the idea of Cybertrax, which is the name of our system, back in the early 90s. And I had seen it grow and evolve and become the product that it was. And then to have someone turn around and say, no, 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 throw it in the trash. You can't do this anymore. That was jarring.
Yeah, for sure. But and again, I wasn't there for this, but you and I have spoken before. So like you went down this road and you're evaluating these different systems, right? And then much like a lot of the other people that are going to listen to this and other people I've spoken to in logistics and 3PL, 4PL, said a TMS alone doesn't really cut it, and there's always like these gaps that you do an analysis of like, well, it does 70% of it, which is great, right? Because then the maintenance falls on that SaaS or whatever. But then how do you close the gap, that functional gap on that 30 or 20% where it would really make you efficient, right? You went down a path of hybrid.
Correct. Yes. And it's just not the efficiency piece, but it's also the differentiates. It differentiates. Sort of like a TMS and sort of like the engine room of running a freight forwarder. That's sort of what we bought, we licensed. We decided to after a long process of evaluation of a number of systems. But then we decided like we need to just be able to differentiate ourselves as well, because otherwise we're just another freight forwarder with a technology that is accessible to others in the market. And the big differentiator for us is PO management, which is providing visibility to purchase orders for our clients pre-transportation, which is often a bit of a black hole. The POs go out to their suppliers, and then at some point in the future, they become available to collect and then ship to a distribution center or to a manufacturing site. But in between the PO being issued and the goods being available, it's a little bit of a black hole. We've sort of like cracked that nut. We provide visibility to that. And that's a differentiator for us. So we decided that we were going to build that module on Salesforce, because the TMS that we license is built on Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to build it on Salesforce and integrate it with the TMS, and that's going to give us our differentiator, as well as the client interface. So we were going to keep the engine, if you will, behind the scenes, but anything that is client focusing, we would develop, which would differentiate us and give us that additional value
Yeah,
for
I,
our
I
clients.
love I love that plan. So, did you sit down with like your leadership team or your fractional CIO and say, how do we curate the best of the features and functions that make Jaguar Jaguar, and then create them on this platform? Like and Salesforce, we've built plenty of tools on Salesforce. It's got open APIs, right? I mean, you can do a lot of connections. You're not limited very much on the features and functions you can do when you build outside. So that all makes sense. But how did you pick the gold? What was the sifting process?
Sure. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. So cutting a bill of lading or cutting a delivery order, These are all functional things that any TMS can handle. Those aren't differentiators. However, providing, as I said, visibility pre-transportation to um, issued POs, as well as the client interface that can really provide value to the client with understanding from a statistical perspective, from an analytic perspective, like what their supply chain looks like. That's where the differentiation, we identified the differentiation, and those are the features that we are developing ourselves, that is going to interface with what I refer to as the engine, the TMS. And so yeah, it's a matter of like understanding from the client what's valuable to them and talking internally with not just the leadership team, but what we refer to as our client relationship managers, who are the client's advocates inside Jaguar. It's like, what are they looking for? What is the client asking for? What is the client querying all the time? What is valuable to them? That's the functionality that we're putting into the client's interface, as well as what we refer to as POEM, Purchase Order Event Management, which is our PO management
Like,
product.
very graceful. The poem, I like that. Yeah. So let me ask, are you all launched with this now? The new hybrid with the TMS?
We're in touching distance, January 2026. So I don't know when this.
I knew the answer to that, so I was setting you up there. But I do have a question that as far as the process that you see now, what's in the rearview mirror, what's forward, is that reflecting back on when you had a custom solution, and you could just kind of pick and choose, even though you left the architecture decisions and the bolt-ons to your team. You knew what features were coming because you had the advocates reaching out to your client base and things like that. What's important. And there are not really any guardrails to that. There's not stuff what lanes you have to stay in. But when you build on top of another system, you do have limitations. There are guardrails, even though they're not in effect. It's not a jail cell, but there are guardrails. How have you navigated as far as like working with your team and saying, well, we can do this, but we can't really do that. And if we do that, it's going to take more time or money because we have these workarounds. Have you had those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution. So I put together, I refer to as a task force to lead both the implementation and the development of those systems. And there are hard choices that we have to make. There are some things that we're going to get improvements to our system, particularly around data and analytics. So we're going to have much more data that we can able to project and deliver to our clients in easy digestible formats to allow them to be smarter about what they're doing. But you're right, because of the way the licensed TMS is built, there are some things that we aren't going to be able to do, and there are there are sacrifices that we have to make. Nothing is perfect in life. I'm sure you know that, Craig. And
Yeah,
there are sacrifices that you have to make, and you just have to make an evaluation of like what is what's the best worst thing that we're going to cut here, and hope that those decisions are right. We're going to find out next year when our clients have sight of our new
it's
system.
exciting times, right? It's exciting times because then you can see the stuff working, and then you can kind of take a step back and say, okay, we have some tweaks here, tweaks there. But I always think it's exciting because when you have rollouts, it reveals either a process improvement requirement that you might have, right? Because you have a new system, and then there's adoption and implementation stuff that you want to see where your ROI is going to be. So there's a lot of things to look forward to and also be cautious of. But I think it's good stuff. So we talked about this before, and you had mentioned it just a second ago, and I picked up on it. You're talking about analytics and massive amounts of data, and other logistics companies. We the requests we get are for like AI overlays and how to make the most of different information from fraud to distribution channels and efficiencies and things like that. What are you seeing in as far as the next ask or potentials in the industry from Jaguar's purview?
I think AI is. I mean, you can't go two steps without someone talking about AI or or asking you how it's affecting your business or your industry. I have a philosophy of crawl, walk, run, and we're implementing AI solutions, but in a very controlled and managed way, and really trying to like eke out what the ROI is. Because I think there's a lot of hype around it, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big believer in it.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean I think it is going to have, tremendous impact. I don't think we're completely there yet with a number of workflows and automations and other things. I mean, it's the LLMs are great for marketing and for for writing various documents and for reviewing documentation, one thing and another. But there are limitations currently, certainly from my experience, on some of the very specific AI tools that we see touted in the marketplace around around workflows or around understanding the supply chain and where changes need to be made. Some of them
There's,
work, some of
well,
them
some of
work.
that gets really complex too, right? So there's nuance where no one would have the confidence to leave it up to AI to make decisions. You know,
So yeah,
complex.
and I think that's right. I think sort of like my view, I think a lot of people's view is sort of like, well, I hope it would be anyway. Sort of like AI is there to enhance the employee, not to replace the employee, and to like allow them to be more effective, to be more efficient. Um, but it's not there as a replacement, and I certainly don't see that anytime in the near future, near to medium future. Our goal is to implement AI technologies that allow the team to be more effective and to allow us to do more with the same.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I feel like the evolution has been like the last couple of years is that there's always the people on the bell curve that are early adopters and they see this potential at least uh, from their window of the stuff that they want to tackle straight away. And I think the rest of the people in the middle of that bell curve have been talking about it and researching it to the best of their ability. And then they start using stuff like Copilot or Chat GPT in varying degrees, whether it's emails or whatever. And then they go, oh, I can build an agent, and that agent can reply to this email that is a standard. I'm not pedestrian, but not unimportant, but pedestrian. And then you can say it can make this decision. And then they're like, wow, that I can see it saving time. Like we're now in 2025, starting the beginning of 2025, our requests have been far more articulate and they've been more advanced as far as putting in AI overlays on existing systems to get stuff done. But there are so many um, stops in to check the process over and over and over again because I think that the industry and people have been echoing your sentiment where it's like no one's going to just arbitrarily go, yeah, go ahead, run it. Let's just hope for the best, especially in stuff that's as complex as logistics.
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely. And a wrong decision or a wrong quote or wrong routing, wrong delivery, can have tremendous impacts.
yeah. And
So
how many of those do you get before you lose that client?
one,
And then the relationship and the reputation sullied, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah, absolutely. So I think AI lives alongside humans, and I think we understand that. Um, so we have a thing sort of it's technology um, powered by technology, but backed by humans, and that's sort of like how we see what we do. And I think we've from the 90s, I've always been heavily leaning into tech, and we continue to do so because I see that that's very much where the effectiveness and the efficiency comes, and so I'm a big believer in tech, but I'm also very cautious about it as well. And that's sort of like part of the crawl, walk, run philosophy.
I want to circle back because I didn't think to ask, but I want to ask is that, because of the road you've been on, went from custom to then evaluating SaaS as their own and landing on hybrid. Do you have any wisdom or advice to impart to other CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, CFOs, COOs that are finding themselves in the same situation? And not that everybody's going to land on hybrid, right? Some people might land on that custom. Some people might land exclusively on relying on a SaaS. But do you have any, advice to impart based on your war wounds or your scars of the time that you've invested in your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I think two things I would say is sort of like one is understand, recognize who you are as an organization and what you want to be, right? And where you want to go. So ensure that you have clear vision on what your roadmap looks like and where you want to go. We have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. So we understand where we're going. Whether we get there or not remains to be seen. That's why it's big and hairy and audacious. Um, but it's out there and it gives us sort of like a directional point. And then, and I think most important, and that was sort of like the aha moment after the hand grenade was rolled into the room for me, is sort of like recognize that like what got us where we are isn't necessarily going to get us to where we want to be. And I think that's really
That's
important.
poignant, right?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you've been successful doing this, but is this good enough to get you to the next stage, to where you want to be? Um, and for me, I thought it was, but came to realize it wasn't.
Interesting. Well, I
So
appreciate that very much.
that would be sort of like at a very high level, right? That would
Yeah,
be sort of like my advice to people is I guess introspection, right? Like understand who you are, where you want to go, and be very, very honest with yourself about what it's going to take to get you there.
that's good advice. Simon, I want to thank you for joining. This was a lot of fun. And I'm going to stay in touch with you because I want to check in with you at the second week of January, see how things went. Thanks everybody for listening to the Curious is Better podcast. Again, we have Simon Kaye from Jaguar Logistics. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure, Craig. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you very much.